Hello everybody and welcome to my first video. It's Amélie from Cottage Remedies and I'm going to be beginning by talking about my story. This will be in relation to health and some extra topics that I'd like to throw in. So, I have come a long way in my own healing journey, but I'm going to start from the beginning, which is not going to be too long ago, but when I was younger, at about 11 or 10, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. And if you don't know what that is, it's an autoimmune disease, which personally, when it comes to autoimmune diseases, I don't believe that the body ever attacks itself, as it doesn't. And instead, it's actually a reaction to what we have done to the wheat, which is such as GMO and also the sprays that they do to the wheat, and that's causing a lot of reactions in people as it's not natural. So when I was diagnosed with celiac disease, it was after I had been growing up with so many different problems. I had severe eczema, I had 2 abscesses, a lot of problems with my teeth, but they were my baby teeth, luckily. And I also was very fatigued. I was a very active child. I did a lot of sport, but I still was very fatigued and weak, and I got sick often. About half the year of the final year before I got diagnosed, I was sick, really. Some days I went to school, some days I just could not get out of bed. I was severely anemic. My ferritin levels were 5, which is extremely low. And I also had focus difficulties, so I found it hard to concentrate in class. That made learning difficult, and so I definitely had quite a setback. And I also was quite skinny, so overall, just as part of celiac disease, I was unable to properly digest and absorb the nutrients and minerals and vitamins from my food. So that caused a lot of deficiencies, which then caused so many different problems in my body. And how I mostly found out that I must have some sort of issue and sort of sparked my mum to take me to the doctor was, I remember one afternoon I was eating a packet of tiny teddies next to my mum, and I just said to my mum, every time I eat these I feel so sick. And it must have flipped a switch in her head, maybe because I was a child that often I didn't really like eating cake. I just never knew why. And for example, when my grandma would make hot dogs with a piece of bread, I would never want to eat the bread, and my grandma still apologizes to me now for somewhat saying I have to eat the bread when we now know that it was likely an intuitive way of my body saying that food makes me sick. So then I went and got tested, as I got an endoscopy, and in the endoscopy the photos showed that I had virtually no villi in my small intestine. So sorry about the plane. So the condition had really taken a huge toll on my body. The problem is that when it comes to celiac disease, what the GPs will only ever tell you is basically the only cure is to just cut out gluten, but don't worry, we've got so many different gluten-free products out there that you can go and eat instead. And so of course I went ahead and ate those, not knowing that my gut was severely damaged. I had a very leaky gut, and that meant I needed to be going and straight away healing my gut, not just eating like everybody else, which is what I did until eventually I changed my mind. So basically that was one issue. Of course, I started to get better just by cutting out the gluten, but I still grew up with a damaged gut. So some years later, when it got to, I was about 15 or 16 when I started to notice acne forming on my face. So then acne became a really big issue for me. Not to mention I was still, getting sick somewhat regularly. I would get tonsillitis, chickenpox, conjunctivitis, I would get the typical sickness conditions, but I wouldn't really think too much of it because we consider it normal today, don't we? Even though it's not. So then I got to about 16, and that's when the acne started to develop. And that was what really consumed my mind the most. I did grow up with constipation and other digestive issues. I would get gas pain a lot, so I could go out with my family to go have a meal and I have to leave the table and go and sit in a curled up position in the car because I had so much stomach pain. So the gas pain was really an issue. It was, the way it wasn't, sorry about the planes. I live near a flight path. But yeah, okay, besides that was a problem. So, but the thing is I kind of grew up with that, so I didn't really think of it as not normal. But the acne I didn't grow up with, all of a sudden it started developing. So that was something where I was thinking, okay, I don't want this, I have to get rid of this. So I was consumed by wanting to figure out a way of getting rid of my acne, like everybody is, because it is really terrible to be in high school surrounded by your girlfriends that have clear skin and you've got the acne. We've all been through high school. We can sort of imagine it, even if acne wasn't the issue for you. Luckily, I never suffered any sort of mental illness was never an issue for me, no matter how many health conditions I went through. Luckily, I didn't have that issue, and even with the acne, I never felt that insecure that it made me depressed or cry, and I never once cried about my acne. And I might just paste some photos of what my acne used to look like, and now as you can see, I have cleared my skin, but it is some time later. It's been a journey. It takes persistence and perseverance, but we got there in the end. Anyways, so I was watching YouTubers like Hiram, other skincare YouTubers, and I would go out and buy those products and try them, and to no surprise, they did not work. I did try the just water method, actually not using any products, but that didn't work either. So I was like, okay, well, that's a bust. Obviously, it's probably better off with these products. So I kept using those. Eventually, the next thing that happened was, it was 2021 when I went on the birth control pill, and it was for the acne. So I went on the Yaz pill, which is supposed to be the best one for clearing acne. But supposedly, my body just had such a negative reaction to that pill, more of an obvious negative reaction than most people. It's terrible for everybody, but for me, my body made me know that I should get off it. So I will run through briefly what happened when I took that pill. So first of all, my acne became much worse. When I was about 15, 16, I never had much acne on my forehead, but I had some acne between my eyebrows and then some on my cheeks, but it was mainly in this area, which is actually the hormonal area. And then basically it just got worse. So it became very cystic, painful, my whole face was very red, so inflammation was going up. So yeah, it did not help my acne at all. It made it so much worse. And part of that's sort of scary, because every time you get acne, you know sort of that there's gonna be a mark left behind. And even if it's not a divoted scar, the hyperpigmentation takes time to fade away. It will happen eventually if you supply your body with the correct nutrients to really heal your skin. But I still have hyperpigmentation that will fade away over time, but it's just a nuisance. So yeah, there's that worry when your skin all of a sudden, when you took this pill that you thought was gonna clear your skin, makes it so much worse. Okay, and then on top of that, I was 1 in 10,000 women that gets vertigo from synthetic estrogen. It was really bad. Really unfortunate. I also, like I said, I never had any sort of mental health issue besides as a side effect from the pill, I became quite hypochondriac. I was suffering from breathing difficulties, so I went to the doctor and got them to test me for asthma, which I didn't have asthma, but whatever, I went home with the asthma puffer anyways. And I also started getting a lot of panic attacks, which I'd never had before, but all of a sudden I was having the worst panic attacks where I would be shaking uncontrollably and actually screaming. Like, I would be screaming. It was terrifying. I don't know how they got that bad. First of all, my breathing made me feel like I was suffocating, and it was when I was having kind of a bad breathing episode that I would send myself into a panic attack because I'd be so scared that I couldn't breathe. So it was really that whole time. I only lasted 2 months on the pill, but I should have stopped it much earlier. But the whole time was just so fear-based, and it was terrible. I was convinced I was gonna have a stroke. Well, the hypochondria convinced me I was gonna have a stroke because I was having headaches every single day. So I was taking 3 Panadols a day to get rid of the headaches. Of course, my emotions were way out of whack, so I was crying for no reason. And the whole thing was just a disaster. Of course, the vertigo scared me. And then everything to do with, I was dizzy as well. So I was so dizzy all the time, like I was gonna fall over. I was just a complete mess. And this is probably some sort of lesson, but when I first took the pill, the next day, I got cold and flu-like symptoms that lasted a week, and I was terribly sick. The second day of taking that pill, I became so sick. And of course, I just thought that it was my body just getting used to it. At this time, I didn't know anything to do with health that I do now. I was eating regularly as I used to. And so I didn't think twice about it. I just thought what most people would. So yeah, the pill was a disaster that did not go well at all. As I said, it's terrible for everybody, but that was my experience there. So after I got off it, as I said, I was only on it for 2 months. Then I stopped it, and all the symptoms went away. It took 1 month for the vertigo to go away, and all of a sudden I was back to normal. But my acne was still there. The acne was worse than it was before I started the pill, and the acne didn't get better after stopping the pill. And mind you, the only diet thing I really tried for my acne was cutting out dairy. So back then I was only having pasteurized dairy, but I still cut it out for about 1.5 years, and I was substituting with some plant milks like almond milk. I tried them all. I tried cashew milk, rice milk, not oat milk because I'm gluten-free, but yeah. And I didn't actually really like them. I didn't used to eat much cereal anyways, but I did have coffee every day, and it just tasted terrible in the coffee. So for the most part, that was one of the things that made me just cut out coffee, because I was thinking, okay, well, I don't really like it black. Maybe I did a couple bulletproof coffees, but anyways, so that was the dairy situation. And I was dairy free all the way up until when I started the diet that I'm eating now. So, and by the way, I didn't have any lactose intolerance or anything like that. I just stopped it purely because, I read a lot of people saying that dairy leads to acne, and so I thought I'd give it a long shot, which 1.5 years was a seriously long shot, and I didn't notice any difference at all. Okay, so basically, yeah, the pill was an absolute flop. I'm still doing these skincare routines, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. I'm telling you, I was doing the whole shebang. It doesn't work. It's a complete scam. The amount of money that goes down the drain is ridiculous. And after the pill, I actually ended up going to a skin clinic regularly. Not necessarily a dermatologist, but I was having monthly facials where they would do the red light therapy and so many different things. I'm just thinking, looking back at how bright that was. I don't know if you've ever had the red light therapy, but gosh, your eyes, like you're wearing the black goggles, but it's still so bright. I still to this day don't know what that does to your eyes, but anyways. So I was doing all that where I can't even remember what they did, but anyways, it was a monthly facial for acne. And I also did dermapen needling or microneedling twice, and that is where they create micro cuts all over your face and neck to supposedly stimulate the collagen to heal the acne scars or the hyperpigmentation. But the problem was is that I still had acne at the time. Acne was still coming back. So even after I had had the treatment, I would be getting more acne anyways. Whether it worked or not, it's hard for me to say because like I said, I still had the acne afterwards. But I did know that for a whole week after I'd have the treatment, my face would be red like a tomato because of all the cuts made on my skin. And it was painful as heck. Like, that was so painful. I haven't had a tattoo, but I would imagine that it's like having a tattoo on your face and without numbing cream. But I don't know, maybe I'm just weak, but on my face, it was just rough. Anyways, so I was doing that. I was also using their recommended medical grade skincare products, which was just the same number of products I was using before, but these ones were very expensive and supposedly high class. And I think they did me better than the ones that I was using beforehand, but they still did not clear my skin whatsoever. I think they just made my complexion a little bit better. But I still had the red skin, I still had this cystic acne and a lot of different acne. Okay, so I was doing that all the way up until January 2022, which is when I changed my diet. Now everything I'm about to say is the key if you want to clear your skin. And mind you, I was still suffering from the constipation, regular sickness, and all the rest from before that. I used to have weak nails, I used to have dry, cracking, bleeding hands. So much has changed with my health that I didn't even really realize that I was going to be fixing, and also energy levels. So here's what I did this is pretty much my healing journey starts here. So this is what I did. The first thing I did was I went straight on to the strict carnivore diet. I did it cold turkey. The meal I ate the day before was fish and chips because I was on a family holiday. So I just went cold turkey straight into this diet. And I was very strict on it. I didn't have pepper. I didn't even have lemon juice in the homemade hollandaise sauce I was making. And what I was eating was just eggs, butter, water, salt, meat, and including fish. I didn't actually eat any organ meat at this time, but that's what I was eating, and it was all cooked. And I stuck to that for 6 weeks. And, as I said, I was doing it strictly. I was very into it. I was really wanting it to work. And this was just the first thing that I tried. But the problem is that it didn't work for me. And I'd be interested to hear what everyone else's experience was on it. And now looking back, I do have completely different opinions on the carnivore diet. But essentially, because I had such severe constipation and poor gut health, leaky gut, and many different gut problems, bloating, you name it, it was as if my gut found it difficult to digest the cooked meat. So essentially, my constipation actually got worse. I was going a much longer time without being able to have a bowel movement, and it took enemas to actually go to the bathroom, which I didn't necessarily have to do before. And this was throughout the whole 6 weeks. I was having, my energy was very low as well. I felt low energy, and if that's the case, then you don't feel motivated to do as much because you feel lethargic. So then eventually I realized I need fermented foods because they're pre-digested, easier to digest, and I need enzymes, which comes from raw foods. So then what I did, okay, it's storming. Hopefully we can push this out for a little bit longer before I start getting rained on. But so then I made that connection. So I got the GAPS diet book and I read it front to back, and I said, okay, this is exactly what I need to do. I was already familiar with the GAPS diet from grade 10. This was at 16. I did try it, and I did the intro diet pretty much nearly the whole time, but it was very hard. I used to be a very picky eater, so actually doing the GAPS diet was very difficult for me, and I did not really stick to it properly. And I just could not think of anything worse but than eating the food on the GAPS diet. Okay, I had to stop and wait for the storm to pass, but I think it's okay now. So I was talking about from when I transitioned from carnivore to GAPS. So yeah, I did the GAPS intro diet for 2 months. It's typically 6 weeks, but I extended it just because I found it to be making such huge improvements in my health. So I wanted to prolong that. So I did the stock every day. It's soup. Almost, you begin with 3 times a day, and then eventually you can add in scrambled eggs and avocado, which I'd have for breakfast, or some squash pancakes. So the diet itself is actually low fiber and high in animal products, but there is some vegetables here and there and a little bit of fruit as well. So I stuck exactly to that. No starch throughout the entire GAPS diet, and the key is lots of fermented foods, and these are what was really helping my health. Looking back, I don't know how much probiotics I would have been getting into my diet beforehand, so it is just something that I really needed. And also, when you eat fermented foods, they're pre-digested, so your body doesn't have to actually do much work to digest them, and then you're getting the healing properties that can work to heal your gut before you start eating food that you'll be digesting on your own, if that makes sense. So then after intro GAPS, I transitioned onto full GAPS, and I was doing that for about 3 months before. I still am on the GAPS, I would say pretty closely to the GAPS diet, or animal based, however you want to say. I say I'm practically on the GAPS diet because I have stuck to the no starch fermented foods with every meal and meat stock every single day. So those are the main 3 principles of the GAPS diet. And what kind of changed is that the only thing I did change of it was I do have coconut aminos from time to time as a little bit of a condiment, which isn't necessarily in the diet protocol. And I also do have raw milk that's unfermented. In the GAPS diet, you can't necessarily have milk that's dairy that's unfermented, even if it is raw, but I find that I don't have a problem with it, so I did introduce that. I don't drink pasteurized milk, but I do drink raw milk. So those are the main 2 things that I changed. And I also did add in some raw primal diet, some parts of it, like I do eat raw meat from time to time whenever I feel like it. I eat raw organs, and I did include high meat as well. So I have kind of done more on top of the GAPS diet itself, but everything that I've done has been through listening to my own body, through taking bits and pieces from different diets and putting it together into one thing that has been the most helpful and healing for me. And personally, it has been very successful. So that is where I'm at now. It's been since January 2022, which is when I did the carnivore diet, 6 weeks later. So about mid-February to now, it's been over a year on the GAPS diet, and I'm loving it, and I'm continuing it, and everything I'm doing, I've come a long way in my healing journey. I still am healing. With my acne, I get a pimple every now and again, but besides that, I have come so far. I've healed so much that I didn't even think I needed to heal. I haven't been sick once since starting the carnivore diet. Since starting and changing my diet, I haven't been sick once. And like I said, I used to get sick often. And so yeah, my skin looks better. I have so much more energy. I can think and concentrate clearly. My concentration wasn't always great, especially with the low iron. And yeah, so that is my healing journey and where I'm at. And so now you can kind of get to know my story and why I do talk about health and healing topics. And it is because I've experienced it myself. I have experienced the life where you have a lot of ailments and you feel terrible all the time, in comparison to the life where just by living naturally, eating the way that our bodies were designed for, getting the proper nutrients every single day, supporting your body's elimination pathways, since mine were always not functioning properly and now they are, the life that you can live as a healthy human is incomparable, and it is so worth it. So if you are considering, say you have acne or another condition and you're considering changing your lifestyle to heal that ailment instead of going the path of taking a pharmaceutical drug to band-aid the problem that doesn't actually treat the root cause, then seriously don't think twice about it. There are so many testimonies other than mine out there of people who are just living so much better than they were with their ailments. And the biggest part of it is diet. There are many other things that go into it, but diet is a huge part. So thank you for listening to my first video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you.